Travis. This is Beck Galway. We're Unadulterated Grace. And today we thought we'd do something a little bit different. We're just going to talk and share about our experiences and you know, just have a little bit of a fellowship, and you guys are going to have a little look into how we communicate and what we believe. Give you a bit of a background. So,
where to start?
Where to start? So many experiences, so little time to share, but we'll just go with what we've mainly, things that have stood out to us over the years.
I'm just going to get some water.
Okay. So, basically, I've always been, people always ask all the time when we go to churches or conferences or wherever, they'll say, as soon as they know we're Christian, oh, really, how long have you been a believer for? Well, I've always just kind of been stumped by that question, because it's the fact is, I've always been a believer. I believe we're all believers. I believe that we had a substantial relationship with our Father in heaven, and then we came to earth. I don't believe it was just willy-nilly. And yeah, when people ask me how long I've been a believer, I can't give them an answer, because I've always known the Lord. I've always, as a kid, always just had this amazing presence that, you know, this amazing belief that there is God. I've never not doubted. I've never not known anything, you know, even from birth, really. Along with knowing that has been, all our lives has been times where God has intervened, and I'm sure everyone can relate where you've been saved in the sense of, you know, nearly having an accident and nearly dying, but all of a sudden someone saved you. And we've had experiences like that. Beck herself has, when she was 18 months old, was diagnosed with, she had meningitis and was ended up in hospital and was in a very critical, serious stage.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I don't even realise how serious it actually was. You know, in that sense, I do kind of some days just take my life as granted, but I specifically remember when all of this was happening that I was taken into heaven, and I did see Jesus, and I saw all it was just a man in white robes, and everywhere around him was just blue. And it doesn't sound like a lot. Nothing really much happened.
Well, it sounds a lot. It sounds a lot.
But I just saw him, and I think it just, you know, that was before any, you know, that was the earliest remembrance I ever have. And it just kind of goes to show that that is the simplicity of Christ, is that it was just him. He is everything that we need, you know, just one glimpse of him, and, you know, you're set. You don't need anything else. Just one glimpse of those eyes, and everything around you just falls apart. You don't need anything else but him. And
you were lucky to have that encounter, to be honest, because, you know, a lot of people, when they have a spiritual encounter, it's usually when they're a lot older. Beck was 18 months when she had that encounter with the Lord, and, you know, she was hooked up to, or she had tubes coming out of her body had swelled up, she was yellowish. It was just like a pretty traumatic time for my parents and everyone, but everyone had hope. The doctors had said, you know, they pretty much had said she had permanent brain damage and all sorts of things wrong with her. They weren't sure if she was going to come out of the coma, but, you know, it was only Dad, actually, God had spoke to Dad. Like he was praying, and everyone was praying. We had churches in Singapore and all over the place praying, because we were friends with some pastors, and so there was a lot of people praying, and you know, God, in the quiet time that Mum and Dad used to sit down beside, you know, her, and used to talk to her constantly, because you're supposed to talk to people that are, you know, in comas, they can hear you and whatnot. And yeah, Dad heard God's voice, and he said, rub Beck's toe, rub her big toe. And so Dad started rubbing her big toe, and like, I mean, seriously, all the doctors were like, nah, she's not coming out of the coma, it's pretty bad, da da da. And he starts rubbing your toe because he hears God's voice, and within like 10-15 minutes, Beck woke out from a coma. It was amazing. Everyone was like, hey. So, I mean, that's just one instance where God saved my sister's life. And even with myself, I've had instances when I was young where I think I might have been maybe 4 years old. Could have been a little, I was about 4 or 5. In Melbourne, in one of the main sections of Melbourne, there's a 6-lane road, 3 one way, 3 the other way, and apparently Mum and Dad went to the shop somewhere in I don't know if it was Dandenong or wherever it was, and I went looking for them. I took off with my nana and went looking for them, and I stepped out on peak hour traffic. Like, there's, what peak hour traffic's like. There's cars are going past. I mean, it's not just a common road, it's a freeway. So it's like, busy traffic, fast traffic. And here I am, 4 years old, jumping out in front of the road, and cars are coming everywhere. And I'm just like, stop. And I walk past. I'm just like, stop. I mean, what kind of authority would I have had? Like, seriously, you can just tell the Lord was obviously with me and in me, and, just going in the middle of this big, huge traffic, just going, stop, let me pass, thank you, stop. 6 lanes, man, and when my mum found out, whoa. But that was a testimony. It was a testimony to her as well, obviously, because she saw that God's grace was there, and, somehow I had managed to cross that road and got to them safely. And it's just numerous stories and things that, where you can tell that God's already been there, and always. I'm sure you guys have stories as well. That's where it comes into play before, when people say, when were you saved? Well,
you've always been saved. It's
forever.
It's this thing as well, and I don't think we've got time to go in it today, but the fact that Jesus came in to save the world, his blood didn't just go on, Veronica and Beck. It went on the whole world. It says that he came to save the whole world. And whether or not you say, well, you need to say the sinner's prayer first, I don't know if that's true. Where does it tell me? Where does it say?
There is no sinner's prayer.
I don't know. If there is, please let me know. I'll be happy to look at it. But, I think everybody is already saved. They just need to come to the recognition. They need to be aware of. Yeah, exactly. And it's there already. It's there already. And just kind of like going on different like scenarios that I've had. A time when I was going to bed and I had all my translations. I was reading all my translations that night about Mark, the book of Mark. And I went to sleep and I was awoken and Jesus came in all his white robes, and he had his crown still on, and he had blood dripping from his face and from his hands. And
it's beautiful. This is what happens when you start sharing. Like, you start to feel the presence all over again. And not only that, the excitement builds when you start sharing your experiences with people. Just, it's all about remembrance, Jesus is big on remember me, It's so easy these days to get caught up in life. Your job, your family, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, it's just so easy to be distracted. Telly, movies, and, he says, remember me. And, when you do start remembering is when you become grateful.
Yeah.
You become... and this is also what, as the previous video was talking about, you can have a positive or a negative influence on people and on yourself. And it's like, when you start remembering how good he is to you, how he has turned up time and time again when there's been no one around and it's only just you in your room, and, pouring out your heart because, he just loves those intimate times. And that's when things radically happen. That's when you take that time to be with him. It's never boring. There's always an adventure. Rebecca was speaking on her adventure, and, just hearing it is stirring up faith in me as well as stirring up with Beck. And it's always an adventure. It's never dull. It's never the same thing. Like,
Well, I was saying, so Jesus came in and he had all the blood dripping from him, and he had the crown of thorns in his hands, and he was in those holy white robes, and he came in, and I physically, literally heard angels singing. I actually heard a choir singing, and it was so piercing my ears that, you know, it was incredible. And he touched my face, whether it be in the spirit or whether it be in real life, I don't know. But regardless, I woke up from it, or I was jolted awake from it, and I touched my face and I could still feel it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it was so incredible. Oh, which reminds me about when we went to John Crowder and we were praying for you. Hey?
What happened?
And we were praying for weight loss miracles.
Oh, yes.
That was insane.
That's a little bit of an experience. We went to a conference here in Perth, where we're from, in Western Australia. John Crowder, I don't know if you know about him, but I recommend his books. They're awesome. We went to his conference, my brother, Daniel, and obviously Beck and myself. And he was talking about weight loss miracles and all these other miracles that had happened and occurred. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. But mostly I was just like so blasted by God's presence. Like, a lot of the time when I go to conferences, yeah, I'm listening to the people, but mostly I'm just like, I tap into Jesus like every single time I'm there, because the presence, sometimes this is the thing, like when you're alone, I feel like you get lots and lots of revelations with God and your personal experiences with him alone in your room or whatnot, or driving or whatnot. In conferences, I think there's a collective anointing, because like people are all there because they want to focus on the Lord. That's the reason why they go. And so I think there's like a little tap in that you can do that, I get blasted, I do. Anyway, digressing. So after the conference, we had an awesome time there. After it, we went back, we stayed at a hotel. We went back to the hotel room, and Beck was like, I want to pray for you. She was so inebriated on the Holy Ghost. She was just like all over the place. And
Daniel's like, shh, because this is like 2 o'clock in the morning. He was like,
He's like, shut up, there's people sleeping. Whatever. And you can't stop what's already happening. Anyway, so Beck's on the floor, and then she's like, I want to pray. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to lay my hands on your belly, because, the river of life comes out of my belly, because Jesus exists there, and there's unending river and fountains that are popping out all the time, Anyway, so she laid her hands on my stomach, and all of a sudden she starts screaming. Like, I'm receiving. I'm just like, yeah, because all of us were intoxicated. Like, even Daniel was intoxicated. My brother.
I didn't want to think he was.
This is what happened. Anyway, and I was like, oh yeah, and then she starts screaming. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm looking down. Daniel's like, what? And Beck's like, can you see this? I was like, oh my god! And we're like, what? And I'm looking down at my stomach, and I can see that there's like the skin on my stomach was moving. It was like
morphing.
It was like sand just moving across.
It was insane.
It was like really, basically it was showing, and this is what I've always believed, we are atoms. The science of this is that we are atoms. God is our creator. He can do anything. How do you think healings occur? They just occur because the atom, the molecule manipulation by our creator. He can do anything. So it was like really awesome to see, and this one was going crazy because she's just like putting her hand on, and it was moving underneath her hand. It was awesome. So that was our little experience of shape shifting, really. Yeah. And the Lord's spoken to me previously about this concept of shape shifting in terms of like healings, and even in terms of body shapings is actually what He's talked to me about previously. But I mean, this is just a sample of things that occur in the kingdom of God. It's a sample of things that could occur in everyday life. We don't
need to do anything.
We were in a hotel room. We were just we were intoxicated. We were under the influence of the Holy Spirit.
But it's because we were just enjoying him. We didn't need to do, we didn't do nothing at all. In fact, I just remember John was literally just speaking about, you know, what happens, and suddenly I was just like, seriously, I just started laughing. I just had that joy well up, and you know, the joy when like your heart is just in your stomach, you feel it from your stomach, and it's just heat, it's just like fire, and you got to let it out, and if you don't let it out, you're just going to explode. That's what happened.
It was awesome. It was just like one experience where, you know, when you see these things manifest and the excitement you get from it, it's just so contagious, you know. Beck screaming, she's just laughing hysterically on the floor because she's just like, oh my gosh, I can see, I can feel things.
It was crazy.
It's amazing. But, you know, like, that's the thing. Every single time with the Lord is something different. It's a huge adventure. And a lot of people, you know, they just think, oh, you know, being a believer is boring. You just, as we know, there's hundreds of different types of Christians. And I don't even really like the term Christian very much, personally, because it's associated with the church. And although there's nothing wrong, like, you know, I can't say there's nothing wrong with the church. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, but church as an organisation, not church as in believers or gatherings or hangouts or whatever's.
I think just the churchianity has got a bad name to it. Organisation has got a bad name, but, you know, we are followers of Christ. We are believers. Obviously, the term Christian is in the Bible, but seriously, it means little Christs.
It's actually a terminology that we invented.
Was it?
Yeah, Christianity.
I thought it was in the Bible.
It's yeah, but I mean, whatever. You find a lot of Christians, people that were Christians in the 80s, the 90s, whatever, have come away from the church, and they, you know, they, you know, disagree with a lot of it and bag out and da da da. But you know, basically, what you got to do, I think, is you just can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If the water's muddied, it'll be cleansed. It's not up to us to cleanse it. The Lord will cleanse it. But, you know, the main common unity thing that we have is that we are believers. We believe Jesus.
And the awesome thing is as well, you know, I used to always get a bit funny if, you know, this was a long, long time ago, but with different denominations, because we do tend to think that we're so completely different from each other. But there's certain things which, you know, denominations have, which is so awesome. You know, one might fully know the Bible inside and out. That's not a bad thing. One might fully be, you know, intoxicated 24/7. That's not a bad thing. You know, one might have visions, the other one might have understanding. You know, everything together. And the awesome thing is the awesome thing is as a grace message, that is one thing, that whether or not you believe in speaking in tongues or don't believe in it, it's one thing that brings us together is the blood of Christ. It's one thing that brings us together is his cross and his crucifixion and his resurrection.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that is why this grace message is actually taking the world by storm. It's actually awakening. And I do think, you know, it's near the end. I do think because it's that unity that Jesus wants. It's that unity that everybody is coming together, and the focus point is him. The focus point is him. It's nothing else. It's him.
Not the traditions that we've been taught. Like, there is such an awakening going on within the church, really. There are those that are suddenly awakening and seeing and deciphering for themselves what's truth, what's tradition, what is truth, and what someone said. It's always really, really good to do your own research, have your own experiences with God. Don't rely on other people's things or experiences. It's only you. And the thing is also, none of us are created the same. Like fingerprints, we've all got different fingerprints. There's not one that's the same.
And tongue prints.
Okay, and a tongue print. But you know, that means diversity. And it's the same thing with Christianity and churches and different kinds of believers, is we're all individual in that sense that we all have our own personality. It's a personality that God has he's cultivated, he's created, because he doesn't make mistakes. The Bible says we're wonderfully made, and we were formed in the womb. Before we were formed in the womb, he thought of us.
Before we came into being, we were just a thought in his head.
And the thing is, but that's the thing, he didn't make a mistake. He created us with certain strengths and weaknesses, certain parts of our personality, and that's the kind of thing with different kinds of groups and diverse sects of Christianities, is that your personality will be, you'll be more comfortable in a certain group because of your personality. I just know that, you know, basically before these terminologies of being a believer came into being, there was a nature, a naturalistic way of thinking. You got to think about people in the past. You got to think about tribal cultures. You know, me being with, you know, Aboriginality. You have a sense of spirituality. There is, like with Aboriginals, Australian Aboriginals, there is a overwhelming connectivity to our earth, Australia. It's almost like we're formed from the dirt here, like from the clay here. It's actually very strong. It's a strong pull. It's the strength and the pulling, spiritually speaking, is so strong. It is my identity. And, you know, I also, in future videos, will be talking how that identity of that spirituality with Christ's spirituality, because I don't really feel like Western culturism of the church is accurate in a lot of ways, and spirituality runs deeper than any organization. It's something you feel, it's something you have experiences with, and this is basically what we're doing with this video, is just talking about our spiritual experiences. And, you know, it's for people to get where we're coming from. Yes, we do believe in God. We believe in Jesus. We have these spiritual experiences, and that's fine. Some other Christians don't, but that's okay. They have other...
We love you too.
They have other attributes that are vitally important to the world. Just the same as what we have. There are dreamers, there are productive people, there are actioners, there's prophetic, there's... evangelical, there's all sorts of us, you know, and that's why I don't like bagging out other people, because I feel like we're all part of one body.
Well said, well said. So guys, I'm just thinking about Yum Cha right now, because we have got a date to go out for Yum Cha with the fam. So thank you so much for tuning in. Bless you guys, we love you a lot, and we hope to do many more videos, and cheers!
Cheers, drink deep!